Welcome friends to another Halo video. Today we look to the Covenant and a member of their military forces, the Lekgolo, known better to you and me as hunters. They are worm-like species who were discovered in dense colonies within the rings of Tay. Each of them is commanded by an expansive Gestalt intelligence, and together they're capable of taking on many forms. When they do form together, they become more intelligent as well, and they can arrange themselves into special types of arrangements. One would be the Lekgolo, a hulking, strong body, clad in heavy armour, and that type of hunter will get an assault cannon and a shield, and there are very few that can measure up to them in the Covenant's army. And because of their size, they view others of their own and differing species as irritations, things that are in their way. So they're quite brutal, and this can lead to a lot of collateral damage. As mentioned a little earlier, they originated in a place called Tay. It's a massive blue gas giant, along with other moons in the area and several natural satellites. The satellites are debris that would seem to be the remnants of Forerunner orbital complexes. And it's there that the Covenant found them tunnelling through the remains of the Forerunner installation. They've been doing that for many generations, and amongst that time they had splintered into many different types of groups. Because of the efforts required to tame them and extract them, the Covenant have made no further attempts to return to Tay. The system that Tay in, because there's so little there that they thought of, is not contained in many records, databases, charts, and those few records that are there were lessened even more after the loss of High Charity. Of the many colonies that the Covenant identified upon discovering the Lekgolo, only a few they considered actually useful to them. When they are the little worm cells, they are of very little use, but when a collective gestalt is formed, complexity biologically increases, complex hormonal changes are made, and bioelectrical connections arise. So when several are bound together, their intelligence increases many times over. This intelligent increase is only really limited by nutrient requirements and physical complexity. And the Covenant have employed technology to further improve those natural limits and created controlled masses of Lekgolo for machines such as the Scarab and the Harvester. So they did find them useful later. When the Covenant first discovered the hunters, they were pretty appalled if you think of their mindset on Covenant technology, and there were many of these worm creatures infesting throughout Forerunner orbital complexes. They were not very impressed. And so, upon trying to stop them, they got involved in quite a bitter conflict, and the enemies, the Lekgolo, adapted and spread faster than they could be rooted out. It was only when an arbiter arrived that both sides were able to strike a bargain. This event was known as the Taming of the Hunters, and though later in the Halo story the Covenant has ended, the Lekgolo continued to serve in a similar capacity as they did before, amongst the various splinter factions that the Covenant break down into. As I mentioned earlier, the Covenant's record of where the Lekgolo were actually attained from is pretty thin. However, those that did accompany the Covenant out into the wider galaxy have become useful. The Covenant, the San Shayum to be more specific, have pruned several families of Gestalts because those families demonstrate Useful behaviours and forms. Some of the more useful ones will have been augmented with tools to provide protection, environmental support, sensory inputs and nutrient feeds. And there are around 6 useful ones that are cultivated, which we'll go over now. I'm not going to butcher their fictional names, I'm just going to tell you how they are used by the Covenant. One group will be used as exploration colonies to map the interior of a dreadnought. Others will take on defensive forms in pairs and will be used in the Covenant military as heavy shock troops. Some will be artificially engineered as control masses for agile excavators such as the Scarab. Others will be large gestalts used in excavation platforms such as the Harvester. And now we're just going to go over a few facts regarding the hunters. The gestalts talk to each other by entwining extended Lekgolo appendages, or alternatively by ringing and vibrating their bodies, which generates a deep, resonating sound. Attempts to translate these are rather vague in terms of their results, but in basic, almost non-language terms, they communicate things like comfort, recognition, meditation, or even the reciting of poetry, and the deep relational bonds between those in the Lekgolo colonies have been exploited by the Covenant. For example, splitting a colony into 2 individual Lekgolo units, known in combat as a bonded pair. This makes them fiercely protective of each other and vengeful if one of them should fall. So now, friends, I turn things over to you. Got something to say? Say it. Drop me a comment down below.